All right, welcome back to the indie side. My name is Peter McCollum, four-time published Amazon author, and today I have another indie fantasy author. His name is Ryan. Tell us your full name. I'm sorry. Introduce yourself.
Okay. So, hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Null. I live in southern Indiana in the U.S. I do have three boys, 5, 6, and a 15-year-old. And then me and my wife been married 15 years as of August. So, I write epic high fantasy series that everyone's really come to know, the Flare Chronicles. And I've got special editions coming out in October 1st for books 1 and book 2. But then I also have two novellas in Australia that'll be published next year in Australia. One's a dark fantasy, one's a YA fantasy. And then I also have a spicy romancy series that is very similar to my epic high fantasy in the fact that I created my own worlds, my own beast, character, dragon riders, colleges. And that will be out probably in a couple years, I would say, just because we've already got a plan for the current epic and high fantasy. And then I do have a new website that I want to make sure and let everyone know at www.authorryannoel.com/home. But it has really cool features. It has all the bookstores and stuff that'll carry my books. So it's another way I give back to communities and local shops, supporting them and helping the indie bookstores and the local bookstores across the world.
All right, we were talking before we started about specifically fantasy and how you began down that road. You want to share that again?
Yeah, so my eighth grade teacher, and I really try to give her the dedication and the honor in this series and have go because she was the one that I feel like kind of pushed me towards writing with an idea and a task to write something unique and original, which turned out to be one of the prequels that for this current series in the world of Azrin that I made. And then she liked it so much that she had me write another short story, which is the second prequel. And she just loved it. She said I should be a writer. I had the talent. So all through high school, I told everyone I was going to be a writer, and that's what I was going to do. And the Flare Chronicles Into the Blaze was originally written in high school. But then I got married and had kids, so it kind of took 15 years to come out. It was published last year, and then it's being republished into special editions with book two. But I really try to give her that credit because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today. I probably would have never written a fantasy or made my own characters and beasts and castles and all that fun stuff. But she's passed away now. But I really try to honor her and give her the credit that I believe. She just helped so much.
So is that feedback that really was the catalyst? That was the first real push.
It was. It was. So I had read Dragonlance books, and from about fifth grade, I read 300 to 400 books every year. I mean, I was going to the library. It was to the point where my dad was grounding me from reading because I would come home and I would crack open a book till like midnight, and I wouldn't eat supper. I wouldn't do anything, just read, and I would just plow through these books. And I would collect all the books, and he was like, you can't do that. You've got to do homework and chores and all this stuff. And I love, riding dragons and being I almost felt like I was in the world of books. I was in that book, like I could vividly picture me there as one of the characters. I never really thought about writing. Like writing wasn't something I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do until she had that one project, and it was like 25% of our grade. So, I mean, it was pretty, I had to do well on it. And I end up just looking at all the books I read and everything I was out there. And I love Lord of the Rings and Dragonlance and D&D and, all that stuff. And I was like, I could make my own realm that's really like Dragonlance and D&D, but it's my own unique kind of thing. And so I just started writing and then ended up turning into a really good story. I'm like, this is unique because there's nothing out there like it. And it's kind of nerdy, you know. It's pretty cool, though. I think it's cool. And I don't know if it'll pass the class, but, hey, this is my story because it's me, it's unique. And probably, I think it was a week later, she ended up talking to me after class was over, and she was like, "Did you go to school for writing? Like, have you written stuff before?" And I was like, "No, I just love to read books." And she was like, "You should be a writer. You've got the talent. I've been teaching forever. I can spot it when I read someone's work." And I was like, "I don't know. Writing's not for me. My dad's a tool and die guy. I'm more of a IT computer guy. I love books and not, never thought to be on the other side." And she was like, "No, you really should." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I'll write another story, and if you think you like it, then I'll just write." And she said it was better than the first one. She loved it. So, um, at least for half of high school when she was alive, she would always call me for coachings or ask about writing and that. And she was the one person in my life that I feel like, if I wouldn't have, if I wouldn't have started it or met her, then none of it would happen because by time like I graduated high school and me and my wife we've been together since graduation night, then the stories were already written. I just edited them and critiqued them and made them better. You know what I mean? So the original stuff was there, but if it wasn't because of her, then that original stuff would have never been there.
Yeah, that's great. I think so. You believe that maybe you would have turned out going into family business or what? Possibly
Right. So
just a
my
regular
dad
job.
always Yeah, so my dad always told me that computers was not the way to go, that I had to do something like accounting or something that was more traditional. So I took some accounting classes in high school, but I also went to a career in tech center doing IT, but that was kind of the agreement. So I could go there as long as I took accounting classes at my home school, the home high school, and then my dad let me do that. And so he always said, you got to have that backup. So more than likely, it would have been that. It would have been like accounting or something that is just the norm out there, I guess. But I've never been a normal guy. I've never wanted to take the traditional path. So
Well, you were talking specifically about Dragonlance and how that pulled you in. What was it specifically about that genre that made you, was that your main inspiration outside of your teacher?
it was. I mean, I love fantasy in general just because I could, like, as I was reading it, I could picture me there. But I happened to discover Dragonlance from a friend of mine. He recommended it. I never heard of it. And I'm like, well, I like D&D and Magic the Gathering and all that stuff, but I'll check it out. So I read it and I was like, this is awesome. This is so massive. There's so many things you can do here. And then I started looking at the continent and it was just huge. And then I started reading and collecting. And I mean, I've got over 80 of them personally. And there's over almost 300 books and it's 40 years old this year. So when I still got the map I made handcrafted, on two pieces of paper taped together and all that stuff in high school. But um, when I made that and I kind of thought of that with my teacher, I was like, I want to make a realm that I can write 300 books in or more. I just want to make it endless because I enjoyed Dragonlance and the things that they did there. And so that was my um, really inspiration. So that's what I've done with my series and the map I made. Um, I can write 300 books, and there actually is another map. I just haven't had time to make it. So Dragonlance has like a catalyst that is kind of the big spark, and then they've got books after that and books before. And my map that I currently have covers 2 ages, which is like after the catalyst.
Dragonlance is what made me want to dabble in fantasy writing. I wasn't good at it, but at the same time, what set Dragonlance apart from any other book I had read previously was the maps. The maps were very, it made me feel a little bit more involved in the story itself. And oh, this is where these guys are going. This is how far they have to go. This is what's separating. This is where everyone lives. It was an added level of engagement to a story that I had not yet seen. And it was at that age where you started reading as well. So I think that's why it was so impactful to me, and they still stand out. Now, zooming out and just talking about D&D in general, D&D is something that's been added to since its inception. Dragonlance is 40 years old, D&D is 50, and or just about, and people have been adding pieces to that world since its inception. So it is a great inroad. It's a very welcoming place where you can add your little piece to it, add your little module, or add your little story.
You can, and the cool thing is you can customize it. But well, I really believe, like you said, the maps that make Dragonlance so unique because it was something that had never, done before. I mean, Dragonlance. The crazy thing about Dragonlance is that came real that though that book, the first, well, the first three came from Weiss and Hickman because they were playing a game of D&D and they was wanting a modular, but they're like, we could write a book about this and then people can read it and not just play the game, but they can read it. So what's crazy is me, it really that was the smallest idea it started with, and then it just exploded. I mean, just it became like a pop culture kind of thing, for our generation because nothing had been done before like it. And so when I was building my map, I was like, that's cool. And if they can do that, people are going to think this is the coolest thing ever. So I want to make a map that has that level of engagement and into my stories. And in this map, I can add myths and I can add legends and, something that has just a history and a foundation. It can be so unique that it hasn't been seen in 40 years or 50 years. And that really drove me to make something really interactive and user engagement on my stories and my map.
And there's different things to borrow from. D&D has different, pardon me, D&D has different aspects to it. Dragonlance is for all its tragedies and everything, Dragonlance is a much lighter version of D&D, to where Forgotten Realms is a little gritty and like, oh man, these worlds are miserable, you know. So you can get your own piece from there as well, like Greyhawk. Greyhawk was a more traditional style of play where
Mhm.
you were truly dungeon crawling, and it is interesting you mentioned that because Dragonlance was conceived from a dungeon crawl, basically, just gone mutated, I guess. And I think, did you ever have traditional tabletop games that sort of contributed to what you were doing?
So I played D&D a lot when I was younger. I haven't played it a lot now just because of having kids and work and everything else. But I did play it a lot, and I've always been like played games that made me think or had a big map or strategy games. That's what I've done since I was a kid. I've played a lot of tabletop games, Battleship or anything along those realms. Risk, all great fantasy, classic board games. So I did when I was a kid, but when writing this, it wasn't more like based on a board game and that. Now we do have a card game and board game coming out next year in fall, and I've got 6 shops to carry that, and I've got dungeon masters that are gonna create their own kind of D&D or Dragonlance campaigns based on my series. So it's been cool to see that kind of sprawl into that because it was never my intent, but it is cool to see that growing and into that realm of things.
Dragonlance expanded. Well, it came from D&D and then went back to tabletop in a different fashion with a card game called Spellfire. Something that I'm pretty intensely proud to know of because it's sort of like a pedigree check, like what kind of niche stuff do you know or whatever.
You're right.
Those were my prized possessions, my Dragonlance cards, because I that was niche of niche of niche, and I was just so proud of them. This is my Tanis card. This is mine,
Mhm.
you know. But
Right.
yeah, man, were there any standout characters? I told you what series I enjoyed. Were there any standout characters from Dragonlance?
So I love the Rasslin and Cameron probably the most, but Rasslin was always my really favorite, and Tanya's half elf because they were so relatable. No matter what age, they were relatable. And even Rasslin and all his faults and all his wickedness and evilness that people kind of viewed from the outside in, he really had good intentions. And most of the time, he did try to help, and he was I mean, he was for himself, but he also wasn't ignorant of what was going on. He understood and he knew, and he gave advice, whether people listened or whether people perceived that advice. And he was just so unique. He didn't follow the crowd. I guess he made his own path, and he carried his own weight, and he did something that most kind of like kind of frown, like you shouldn't do that, but he did it anyways, and he didn't follow the norm. He was different. And Tanya's half elf, I really loved him because he was just relatable. I mean, he was just you and me. He had problems, he had concerns, he had issues, but he also had that weight of responsibility and being a leader and deciding what to choose and what not to do. So, in that aspect, he was relatable from any age because we all have the same problems at the end of the day.
Well, he was relatable to me because he kept chasing a chick that was not interested. That's
Right.
specifically then I was like, man, we are really bros, aren't we? All right, you have a lot going on, and I'm pretty interested in just how much work you put into this. Like I said, the indie side isn't just about the work itself, it's about the work you put into it beforehand. And the notes that I've taken is it's remarkable to once again see a person working on local levels, working with local bookstores. So start with your local efforts, and then you could just kind of zoom out to what you have going on in different parts of the world.
So one of the cool things about my website that I really try to, another reason I direct people there, because it's not only benefiting me, but it has a collab spot where you can click, and it has all the local bookshops, coffee shops, small business owners, insurance guy that carries my book. But also on there, you can see what they carry, like merchandise or book, and then it has their Facebook and Instagram plus their website. So it's not only supporting me, but everyone that goes there can click on them and they can support them as local level as well. Um, and the other cool thing is I've got a collab in Ohio. There's a pizza place that is going to name a pizza of the month after my book, all in October. There'll be a place in, well, not very far where I live in October. And then I'm trying to get a cookie place in northern Indiana. They're thinking about naming a dessert. So um, I've also got that. Plus, excuse me, I've got a sixth grader that's getting paid to do the cover of Daniel's journal. So Daniel's one of the main trio characters in my series. But there's going to be a journal for people that pre-order book 3 next year. They're going to get it free. And I've got a sixth grader that is creating the covers, and she's going to do all my prequels for the series, and she's getting paid to do that. So I really strive to help local businesses, local community, and build that from the ground up. And that's where, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the cornfield. So if you didn't know your neighbor, when you got snow, you was kind of SOL because your neighbor had the plow and your neighbor had all this stuff that you needed. No one else was there to help you, so you knew each other and you grew that local small business. So I really try to strive to keep that and to help that grow. They need our money more than corporates, so that's kind of where I've tried to stray. As well as the journal, my mom's actually writing half of it, and then I've already written the other half. So it's from a woman's perspective of, having the baby and being conceived and watching them grow to about 5 or 6. So I really try to strive to keep things local and support small businesses. And then on a global scale, I do have a trip in London in October for 5 days. I'll be in there, pitch my stuff to movie directors and producers, as well as a gala. I've got 3 or 4 ladies there that help me do a lot, and they're great people, great people. And then I've got a few bookstores as well as a library in London that's going to carry the books. And then next year, I'll be there twice. And then I have a person in India that I'll be there for 2 weeks, doing a tour of India as well and helping those local people and the bookshops and things like that. Plus Canada, I'll be there several times next year as well.
No plans for Thailand yet. Our bookstore is making a comeback. It sounds so interesting. I'm like, as you're describing it, I'm trying to visualize it and everything. Like, wait a minute, this small town thing is still going on. I don't buy it. But from what I heard before and during the interview, our bookstore is making a comeback.
They are bookstores. From a corporate level, if you look at Barnes and Noble example, one of the biggest ones out there, they're adding probably 20 to 50 more stores this year alone. They've grown. They're still growing. They haven't stopped growing. Now they've might have shut down a few locations because of sales, or they've got something 10 miles down the road, but they are still growing. And if you look at the local indie bookstores, your mom and pop shops, they are growing at an astronomical rate. They're probably one of the best businesses out there that is growing faster than any other retail or any other place out there. They're growing, and they're not growing, but they're thriving because they're doing the same thing that I'm doing. They're looking for local support, local indie authors, local communities. And if you look at who's helping the youth and who's helping the schools and, you know, all the nonprofit and the baseball games, the softball and all the sports, it's your local people, it's your mom and pop shops, it's your bookstores, it's those people that are helping. In fact, being a bookstore industry is one of the fastest growing things out there today. So they're not only growing, but they're thriving and they're doing very well at it.
It's interesting to hear. They waited until I left. That's annoying. But I can tell you truthfully though that I'm a part of a group of people who would gladly patronize a shop if they saw one, for sure. So if there are more people like that, then yeah, absolutely. I take heart in that. So why don't you go ahead and describe one or more of your books now? Whichever one you want to put forward. Up to you.
Well, so there's two special editions coming out, Into the Blaze and Into the Shadows. Into the Shadows is book two. People have been really liking the covers, things like that. The book is a darker tone. It's still clean fantasy, epic high fantasy, but book two gives you kind of that background in the sense of it gives you more history. Gods of old are they're being told about, they're being informed about, brought to life. There's more magic. There's more of the world building, more of the world exploring, as well as, each book is going to have illustrations. It's going to have quotes for every chapter, and then it'll have my map. When you open the page, you'll have my map that I made there. Plus, the books will be textured, so you'll be able to feel and they'll be granulated. But book two kind of the war's going on in the background, so there's shadows, basically an evil god. She's been banished and she's trying to come back, and so Book one doesn't show that. It just shows kind of her puppeteers kind of influencing the world, making people miserable, spreading evil. And all Daniel's journal, but basically his quest started out just trying to find more about his history. It was a simple, honest, humbling quest. And then what it basically turns into is that, hey, there's a destiny at hand. There's fate. He's supposed to be kind of the chosen one. He's the one, along with his, legendary swordsman and mage, Trisha. And so book two really opens that world kind of. It adds more main characters, has more festivals, more beasts, everything like that. Book one, most people's like, this is really cool. I loved it. And then they got the end and then they're like, well, what's next? Book two kind of opens the why and the how, and here's a little more colors on the painting, so to speak. So I'm really excited for people to see book two. It's also interesting because at the time that I had written book two and book three, it was really a kind of rough, dark time, in my life and my personal growth and being a writer and that. So book two does have a darker tone to it because it kind of in a reflection of everything that was going on in my personal life as well. So, but I'm really, people have been asking about it for over a year now, so people are starting to get pretty antsy. They're wanting to continue the series.
It's interesting that you talked about that. I'm having a hard time writing my next book right now because I'm in too good of a mood. I feel like I write better when I'm in a crappy mood or it reminds me of Sublime, Brad Noel from Sublime. When he met his
Hmm.
wife, he's like, I'm not sad anymore. I don't have any more songs. Sometimes
Right.
a surge of emotion can really, you ride that wave. What propelled me into writing were some negative emotions. When I first got this fifth book started, yeah, it was like some random dirty look that finally pushed me over the edge. It was like, I gotta go write something. But do
Right.
you are you consistent or are you kind of a streaky writer?
So I'm consistent as far as the books are purposeful, and typically there's a deeper meaning, excuse me, behind each book or series. Example, my novel's coming out in Australia next year, being published there. One's a uh, vampire and werewolf, which I never written that. That was just kind of, hey, I'm jumping in the dark and let's try this. But it turned out really good. Um, and so there's a meaning behind it, and even the YA is there's a meaning behind it. And in this series, the Flare Chronicles, it does typically have a meaning, but I'm a kind of, I guess, organizer, you'd call. I have a master Excel sheet that has this just massive spreadsheet, and I've got every continent on there, and then I've got it broken down by trees and that. So typically, most people will build a map and then they'll start creating their stories. I'm kind of backwards in the fact that for some reason I write the first book and then I go back and build this massive interactive map. And then from there, I build the sheets and things like that. So um, it really depends on what the purpose of the book is. Uh, and it sometimes is a reflection of myself or what's going on, but it's purposeful. I always tell people I try to write purposeful so that way, and relatable is the other thing. I always try to make it, if you were reading it, you could fit in their shoes and vividly see, but also feel the way they're feeling.
Last little bit here. You are involved with several different publishers, and you've got several different irons in the fire. So what else outside of this do you have going on? Because it's not just your community. When I looked through your email and I saw that these publishing companies are in different countries. So how do you manage all of that? And what all do you have going on in terms of publishing companies?
Well, so I tend to overwork. My wife says that I'm a workaholic, but I mean, I had a dream of getting my name out there and being known to everybody. And so that's what I was determined to do. And that's what I've done. I've um, worked really hard in getting my name out there. Even if I got rejected, I still attempted to go. And thankfully, I've had some great publishers. My publisher in Canada, Arkham, he's a great guy. He really wants what's best, and he's very similar minded as far as like support local, support libraries, minorities, help everyone, help youth. So we sync really well in kind of our goals and hopes. And then, ironically, the publisher in Australia, Diana, it was kind of ironic how I got that one because I was on a podcast and she really loved what I was doing and loved everything that was going on. And then she invited me to her, to write these novellas for her publishing company that she's trying to start and build. I was like, hey, I love to help, I love to write, and it just kind of worked out from there. I didn't plan on it, and thankfully I've gotten to the point now where I've kind of got a catalog of written manuscripts. So it's not that pressure of like, oh, you got to have this done in 1 month, or 2 weeks, or oh, you're really in the fire or flame, so to speak. And so that's helped tremendously balance out everything. But I do have Man, we've got so much travel coming up, and I'll be in London twice next year. I'll be in Canada about 20 times. I'll be in India for 2 weeks, and then plus all the festivals that I went to this year. We've traveled about 7,000 miles, I'd say, so far. And the way it's looking now is pretty much every week in November, I won't even be in my home state. I'll be traveling outside. I've got about 80 or more bookstores that agreed to carry it, between those and comic book shops or game shops. I've got figures of my series. I've got a place in Tennessee that's going to make exclusive character figures. I've got several dungeon masters that's going to make, they're doing campaigns and things like that of my series. And then I've also got a card game and a board game coming out in the fall of next year as well. So I've been working hard on promoting that as well and trying to get people stirred up and interested.
Well, we're
So,
gonna have
oh,
links for all of that stuff, so don't worry about that because there's a lot of stuff, and it sounds like you are all in on the fantasy, and it's exciting to hear that sort of bringing back that because Dragonlance was mid 80s. The rise of it was right then in 1992 when you had Magic the Gathering, a couple other card games, Guardians, Werewolf, Spellfire. It all exploded during that time. So it's nice to hear people doing it on an independent scale because it's all been independent anyways. But we're about to run out of time, my brother. And I tell you what, it's been great chatting about this stuff with you. I want to make sure we get all of your stuff. So let us know, and we will put it in the description. But outside of that, Ryan, it's been great talking with you. And it's so encouraging to see people beat the pavement and have so many other businesses involved. It's just great. The local burger joint, the local ice cream shop, that's something that you don't hear a lot about. And it is very encouraging. And I hope it's encouraging to other independent writers. So before we split though, do you have any advice for the people looking up at that hill saying, I don't know about this?
I would say the best advice I've always given people is and never give up. Always be determined to get your name out there and really work hard at it. I work over 100 hours a week, so it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of dedication. You got to dedicate to what you want to be and who you want to be known for, and lastly, just besides never giving up, be unique and original. Don't try to do the same thing that everyone's doing because people love you because you're local, but they're going to be like, Joe Smo down the streets doing exactly what you're doing. if you find your niche and find your creativity that is just something different, maybe the same, but it's a different spin on things, but it defines who you are. And I can say through all my stuff, I provide hope and inspiration in a dark world. And that's kind of been my theme. Hey, I give hope and inspiration. I support local. I give back on many levels. So find something like that and spin it to who you are, and people will rally so much around you. And then just never stop believing in yourself, and no matter what, keep on going.
Ryan, no, thank you for joining us on the indie side. Appreciate all this inspiration and appreciate your hard work in the arts. My name is Peter McCollum, and I will see you all next time.